evening, mortals. My name is Jay, and welcome to my studio. Another month, another episode on the Lucid SMP. I hope you like building, as I have a lot of that in store for you today. At the start of this series, I made the long journey from Spawn to this lonely little island in the middle of the cold ocean. Since then, I've constructed a fishing cabin to live in, but that's all I've really done to it so far, as most of my attention has been focused on generating wealth in my industrial area. So this month, my focus was getting the main island up to code. I've got a few builds planned for this. Unfortunately, like all builds, we're going to have to gather some resources before we can get to do the fun part. Since my first build features a load of wood types that I currently don't have, we have to go on an adventure to find them. I'm sure many of you will relate to this, something about builds being bigger than your resources. The ones that I'm going to need are dark oak, mangrove, and willow wood. Fortunately, 2 of these generate in swamp biomes, and this means there's a good chance that they'll spawn next to each other. And with any luck, there'll be a dark oak forest along the way. Using a copy of the seed, I found the 2 biomes that we need right next to each other, and only a few blocks away. Along with this, there was also a dark oak forest. So far, everything is turning up J. The journey took us through many different biomes, some we've seen before, others brand new. This made it the perfect opportunity to pick some flowers. My AFK tower has actually only been partially complete, as I was missing the rose bushes and the dark oak needed to add the final touches. So since this biome was filled with rose bushes, I pinched 1 or 2 of them. I'd also like to use them on my island to add a little bit of life to the dead bushes. But the greatest moment of this trip was getting my dark oak wood. Finally, my house and AFK tower and whatever else I foolishly used dark oak on without actually having any can be truly complete. All this over a couple bloody fences. Next to the dark oak forest was the bamboo jungle, so I took some of this as well. I know I could just grow some, but it's easier just to take it while it's here. I'm going to be brave and try using scaffolding while building instead of the ever-faithful dirt. While in the jungle, I ran into 2 of these taverns. After a bit of reading, I found out that the cartographer here will sell you maps, and that these maps will lead you to modded dungeons. Unfortunately, it's random, and you only get 1 map per special cartographer. So having 2 relatively close together will be helpful. There are some quite cool looking dungeons in this mod pack that I would like to go and pillage. However, I just haven't seen any of them yet. So now that I know where to find them, they better watch out. In this swamp, I got plenty of both wood types with their respective saplings. I probably didn't need quite as much as I got, but it'll save me from having to come back, I suppose. This swamp was partially merged with a ruined village filled with suspicious gravel. So of course I did a little bit of archaeology, which really didn't work out. Most of the loot of this stuff kind of stinks. How am I meant to grave rob in this economy? The pottery shards are kind of neat, but I don't want a bunch of random dyes. I've clearly been spoiled with modded archaeology. With my pockets bursting at the seams, I made the fairly uneventful trip home. We can now start the first build of the video. Some little beach houses. It's no secret that storage is a little tight in the main house, so I wanted some kind of bulk storage, hence this pile of chests outside. I also wanted a home for my portal and somewhere for my animals. How do I accommodate all this while matching the theme of the island? Little beach houses. These guys are deceptively simple. I went back and forth trying to figure out if I should add some overhang to the roof or make them flat like they are in real life. Not to mention trying to figure out how many of these I should do and where they should go. Honestly, these things were driving me insane, which is very embarrassing to admit given some of the builds later in this episode. The colours were actually the easiest part. Beach houses are usually colourful and bright, but the ones here have been here for a very long time. Maybe this island was bright once upon a time, but the snow moved in and it no longer is. Because of this, I wanted to use colours that looked faded and worn. The willow in particular, I feel, really gives off that vibe. The doors were also an easy pick. I think the maple doors look like the slatted wood doors you usually see on them. The interiors are about as simple as the outside, the red one literally being nothing but chests. They are purely a functional build, but I think they add nicely to the lonely atmosphere I'm trying to create on this island. They should be filled with supplies ready for holiday makers, but instead they faded away, only now finding purpose for the lonely fisherman that now calls this island home. Hopefully this build conveys that kind of idea. I don't know, this is the first time I've done a build with the intention of there being a story behind it. I usually just build things I think are cool. Unfortunately, this brings us to the worst part of any large build. The terraforming. And to terraform, I need a ton of dirt, so off I go digging out a whole chunk. It always sucks having to dig up dirt, but I had to do the same for cobblestone later on. I'm quite lacking in these very basic materials. If this placing seems a little sporadic, that's because it is. I'm loosely following a plan, but only kind of. I'm not trying to change the landscape all that much, mostly just flattening it out and covering the worst of the gravel. This island is really weirdly shaped, all sorts of holes and sharp corners, so there was a fair bit I wanted to fix, even if it doesn't really look like I've done anything all that dramatic to it. Now at first I only did around half-ish of the island, so that ugly gravel beach is still there, but do not worry, we deal with it. I want a path wrapping around the islands to the beach houses, then to the next build and then back to the house. But before I could work on the path, I had to deal with some uninvited visitors. I'm not interested in extending my car's warranty. I really need to get a no soliciting sign. The path through the forest areas is very simple, made with coarse dirt, pathing, and spruce slabs. Because if I have to use the spacebar while walking along a path, I will make it everyone's problem. Ask my friends who spent their time catching legendary Pokemon while I rebuilt the path around our house so it was perfectly smooth. I made the path even more obvious with these lanterns. They add a nice bit of atmosphere while hopefully reducing some of the mob spawning. Turns out if you remove everything from your island and don't light it up, you wind up with a bit of a creeper infestation. These lanterns weren't originally meant to be desolate, but once I had settled on desolate for the next build, I figured I should try and tie it in elsewhere on the island. I lined the path with rose bushes and poppies. When doing this, I like to put the smaller flowers next to the path while putting the larger ones further away. I think it looks nice and keeps the pathway looking clearer and tidier. Part of this island is a maple forest, and I intend to replant the red maple trees all over the island once I'm done with construction. These flowers are to dye in the red and add some extra colour. I'm desperately trying to distract from the fact that almost half this island was wastelands while the rest is gravel beach. I went back and marked out the path between my house and the forest path. This required shifting a fair bit of sand to get a smooth path. This isn't its final shape, I refine it quite a bit from when I first started. Along the edges I've piled up some snow to help define the path more and make it look like it's been shoveled out the way. I think it just makes the edges a bit more interesting, or as interesting as plain white blocks can be. I used sandstone to break up the sand a bit. I did experiment with some other blocks, but decided to keep it simple as I was adding the same lanterns and a selection of pebbles and shells. I didn't get it all done at once, as somehow I didn't have enough snow, and I needed some plants. To get these plants, I headed over to the mainland, aiming for the deserts I had walked through in the first episode. Biomes Aplenty adds a bunch of desert grass and shrub plants that will add a bit of life to my sandy beach. I also went to the village I skipped previously, and as expected it had been ransacked, but they left the 3 C's: coal, compost and cake, all of which I helped myself do. Compost is pretty easy to make, I however am just lazy and steal it from villagers when I'm passing through. It'll go in my potato farm to help speed up the growth. I don't have any numbers to prove that this is helping, but I'm choosing to believe it is. In the desert I was eyeing up this camel, but decided that I probably couldn't get it home, and that it really wouldn't like living in the snow. I got way more than I'll ever need of those desert plants, along with some bushes, ferns and sprouts. All this just to make my paths feel a little bit more alive. It's now that I can get started on the big build of this video. All these side quests and gardening have just been the setup. Can you guess what I'm building on my little rocky island in the middle of nowhere? If you said lighthouse, then you are today's winner, and definitely didn't just see the thumbnail. I never really planned on building a lighthouse for this island, but I was recently overcame with the urge to make one. I'm sure it has nothing to do with my Twitter timeline being filled with Allura and Finns making out in one. No, that couldn't be it. The lighthouse I'm building is white and black. I know they're usually depicted as red and white, but I've never seen one like that. The only one I've ever seen was white and black, and I think white and black looks better on the island. I hope you're all proud of me for the texturing on this build. I've mentioned before that I really want to level up my building skills on the server, so this was a big step towards that. And my god, did it take years off my life. How do people do this for every wall? But it's fine, the satisfaction with how it turned out brought me back. Mostly. Also, don't ask me any questions about why the spiral staircase is so weird and changes about 3 times. This happens every time I try to build one, which is a lot because I think they're really cool. I've just accepted it as a flawed part of my nature. Now the tower's looking pretty good so far, if not a little stumpy. To continue this and give it the full height it deserves, I need white sandstone. Now, I used white sandstone because I thought it was fairly common given the sand and all that. Surely there must be a special desert biome filled with white sand, or maybe a cool beach biome. There's not. It can only be found in 2 biomes, the tropics and the mystical grove. Now the tropics biome spawns with the mushroom islands, and the closest one for quite some distance is Santa's Island. Mystical groves are fairly common. There's one that Spiral lives in, but since that's Spiral's area, I'm not going to come in and steal their riverbeds. Something tells me they quite like having those. I just need to find the next closest one, which is over 3,000 blocks away. Fortunately, most of that distance is ocean, so I just waited down my W key and sailed away. I had to quickly stop filming that video because I was about to swim into an ocean monument. One day I will learn my lesson about distracted sailing. Lucky for me, this mystical grove is quite large with plenty of water. So num, give me all the sand. And only a few stacks of sand at that. Look, I want to make sure I get more than enough so I don't have to make this trip again anytime soon. It's not my fault that sandstone is so expensive, it's 4 stacks of sand for 1 stack of sandstone. All this sandstone was put to use making the top of the tower. I finished up some of the insides and now we can move on to our next side quest. I need redstone lamps, but I don't have glowstone. Now I have the vague memory of a villager selling them at spawn. Is this true? I don't know, we're gonna find out. I do also have some other shopping I would like to do while I'm there, so it won't be a wasted trip even if I'm wrong. Off we go down the very safe tunnels. Can you tell I've been there before? The guests are vicious on this last section towards the spawn portal, but we got through alive, which is better than previous attempts. I was right, there is a villager that sells glowstone blocks, so I took just a few of these. More than I'll actually need, but I feel like having some lying around will be helpful. Another example of my gathering mindset. I also picked up some enchanting books, brought 4 and thorns 3 for my armor. With these, my armor will eventually be complete. I don't have an XP farm yet, so it'll take a bit to get all the levels for that, but at least I have them now. I also dropped by Indigo Shop to buy some white petals. I want more white dye, and these are one of the few plants that turn into them. And I know there's a field of them by my industrial area, I just don't want to walk to them. I'm also supporting the local economy, so ha! Spawn is so pretty, I can't wait to ruin it in the next episode of my shop. After my successful shopping trip, I ran home the same way I got there. Hopefully I didn't blow up too many things on the way back. Now this lighthouse design was taken from these thumbnails. Yeah, I just googled lighthouse lamp with redstone and copied the first result. It's a very clever system. The first layer of observers form a loop that sends the same signal round and round. The second layer of observers sends the signal up into the lamps, so you get this cool rotating light effect. I also tried this one with redstone repeaters, which is pretty cool since you can control the speed of the light, but it was way too big for the lighthouse. So the more compact one it was. I used that white dye to make the glass. After my realization with the brown glass and the fishing cut, I've been using stained glass so much more in my builds. It's funny how long it took me to realize that the color of your windows could have such a big effect on the overall build. Once the lid was on the tower, I went back to put the window frames on the tower using scaffolding. Can you tell that I have no idea what I'm doing with these? I got the hang of it eventually, but man, there is a learning curve on these. A fun behind-the-scenes fact, but this lighthouse was originally designed to be spruce, but I thought that might be too much spruce with the cabin being spruce and all that, so I switched everything to deep slate. I think the stark contrast from the black and the white works quite nicely, and it makes it resemble actual lighthouses a lot better. Another little hiccup with the materials for this build. I originally wanted to use dark emerald wood trapdoors from the mod Promenade. Yeah, turns out those are only found in the end, and while I could go to the end at any point to go and find them, I don't want to. I have had enough setbacks with this build that I do not want to be running around in another dimension for wood. I think when I was building it in creative I mistook it for Umbran wood, which is a little funny since they're not even the same mod, they're just both spooky trees. Umbran wood may have actually worked for this, you just have to ignore the little faces when you look up. But if we're going to treat flints as the inspo for this build, that's actually quite fitting. However, I switched to deadwood instead, which I think matches a little better. And it's also somewhat fitting as part of this island was once the wasteland where deadwood trees spawn. So really this was the plan all along, and I was playing 5D chess this entire time. But with the final details added in, the lighthouse is finished. Now any loft staler will be safe. There's not much function to this build, it's essentially just a very large garden ornament, but it's a cool one at least. And has definitely scratched my lighthouse building itch. Now that the centerpiece of the island is in place, I want to work on some more terraforming. I really hate this gravel beach if you couldn't tell. So I'm doing what any sensible person would do and ripping out the entire thing and replacing it with dirt and sand. I do leave some at the bottom to make a smaller gravel beach, leave some variety on the island, not just dirt. I worried that if I made it a regular hill it may look a little boring, so I added in a small cave to break up the hillside. It's very ugly and incomplete right now, as I didn't add the andesite and stone detailing until nearer the end of the build. Now the dirt on this side was the easy bit. I wanted to expand the sand section behind the cabin. It feels weird to fill in the beach I chose specifically because it was nice and flat, but it was too flat and I didn't know what to add, so I opted to just pile sand up. Because what else should I do if not to bury my problems? I used some of the gravel from the beach as a filling material. I think it's a good way to use it up, not like I'm ever going to need it. However, I forgot to light up the massive cave I just built. So yeah, that got a few new residents. Note to self, light up the bloody caves. Now that I have the shape of my island sorted, it's time to add some decorations. The first of these is more paths. I completed my circle with one leading from the lighthouse to the cabin. This path then split, one leading to the trial chamber, one to the cave, and another to the middle of the woods. The build from here on out is a little all over the place as I jump between different things, so I'll try and chat about them in a semi-chronological order. The first was foliage. Some roses here, poppies there, lots of oak bushes to fill in the forest floor, firefly bushes along the path for atmosphere, and plenty of red maple trees to replant the forest I cut down before. I had to farm a lot more saplings for this. Covering an island takes way more trees than you would expect, although I don't know what I was expecting since I've probably tripled the size of the original forest. In between the trees and bushes I put down lanterns in the attempt to prevent mob spawning, while still looking all whimsical and pretty. Lighting this island was the biggest difficulty, and there's still some areas that need improving, namely the beaches. How do I light these without melting the snow? The grassy areas I use the old hiding torches under moss trick, which isn't perfect due to the difference in the grass and moss colours, but it works well enough. If anyone has any suggestions for lighting the beaches without it being super obvious, I'd love to hear them. Since I needed stone to add pebbles to the path, I went ahead and finished up my cave. Now, I didn't light it up initially, so if you could please refer back to my previous point about lighting up the caves that you build. There's nothing too special about this cave, just a little pool of water and some lapis that I found on total coincidence. Definitely adds to the faintly magical vibe. After doing a good chunk of the gardening, I added the path to the beach connecting the first path to my house. See what I mean about it being a bit all over the place from here? The path is pretty much the same as the rest. Nice hanging lanterns, plants, buttons, piled snow and sandstone to add some visual interest. I do have to rearrange my new hill a bit to get the path to run smoothly. The consequences of some of my bad planning are a lesson I know I won't heed next time. Now, in some of these clips you may have seen some of these deep slate things. I wasn't sure what to do with the trial chamber. I could knock it down or maybe put something else there. I ultimately decided to just leave it there, but to add some smaller deep slate builds so it looks a little less out of place. What are these? What do they do? I don't know, I didn't build them, some mysterious previous inhabitants did. Wink wink. The path to the centre of the island leads to one of them, while the other doesn't have a dedicated path. The couple lights are a nice way to add some more light to the build, even if it doesn't do much against the mob spawning. I also drowned the trial chamber in leaves and such to make it look old and more forgotten. This entire time I've been wanting to include a bench somewhere on the island. I've ummed and ahed about where I wanted it, but eventually decided on this little plateau near the beach houses. The build's based loosely on this one I found on Pinterest by Marchyworks. But as you can see, I've modified it to include the box on the island. Look at me, Ma, I'm a real builder now, using campfires in places that they don't belong. This also got a little path up to it and plenty of trees. The last little mini build I did was a snowman. Something our lonely fishermen making themselves a friend even if it was unsuccessful. I couldn't make an actual one since they have this pesky habit of coming to life. So my one's decapitated. Fun fact, this is the pumpkin I wore during the Ender Dragon fight. I think it's nice that it's found a new life instead of just rotting in a chest. The rest of this project was a mix of planting trees, cutting down trees just to replant them, tactically piling snow and adding flowers where the colour seems fit. In the end, we got a beautiful autumnal forest. There's nothing better than taking a stroll along the lantern-lit paths through the cloud of bugs. Maybe I'll take a seat and stare out into the ocean watching the ice drift by. Or investigate the ruins from a time long forgotten. I'm very pleased with how this island has turned out, from a barren wasteland of gravel to a magical forest, with a very cool lighthouse if I do say so myself. I'm sure there'll be a few tweaks in the future, probably in the form of piling more snow and maybe planting some more trees. Aside from that, I'd call this build complete. Now that we have our base of operations fully complete, I'd like to spend the next month pillaging and exploring. I have stacks of treasure maps we could go looking for and the means to find some dungeons. Along with this, there's that trial chamber that's under the very floor I stand on that I still haven't touched. I'd also like to make a point of going around and visiting as many people as I can. My map is very empty up around spawn. This is my shop that I'd like to build as well, so there will be some balance to all of this adventure. But all of that will be coming in the next episode. So if you'd like to and haven't already, then make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified. In the meantime, I'll have more modded Minecraft adventures you can check out. Well, you might not have been able to tell in this episode, as I've spent most of it locked away on my island building, but this is an SMP populated by all of these guys. So in between episodes, why not go check them out and see what they've been up to? All their links along with the Discord and everything else are down below. With that all said and done, I suppose this is the end of another month on the Lucid Falls SMP. So, as the night draws in, I must bid you all a good night.